Welcome to our second episode of Superpowered the Show. My name is Regina Joseph.
And I'm Nick Hare.
And together we'll be bringing you the latest trends and forecasts on geopolitics, economics, technology, and much, much more. So let's get right into it this week. I'm going to start off with my signal of the week. Nick, since we're going to be talking about a potential exit of Greece from the European Union later in the show today, I've decided to choose as my signal of the week another potential future European crisis point, and that is Hungary. The massive migration crisis that has sent daily arrivals of hundreds of people from Syria and other parts of the Middle East to the shores of Europe, it's typically highlighted for its effects on European member states Greece and Italy. But I would argue that perhaps an even greater powder keg is heating up in Hungary. About 50,000 people have entered Hungary illegally since January of 2015, and that's prompted Hungary to draw up plans to build a 13-foot-high fence along its 110-mile border with Serbia. And these moves are in direct violation of European Union rules that govern both Hungary's membership in the EU, as well as dictating movement through European borders. Now, the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has been increasingly recalcitrant as an EU leader. He surprised a lot of people last year when he expressed sympathy with Russia's authoritarianism, and he even claimed his own vision of Hungary as an illiberal democracy. So given his almost total control of Hungary's major media outlets, plus the rise of Hungary's Jobbik party, which is a right-wing fascist party that has control of just under a quarter of the Hungarian parliament, as well as Hungary's geographical proximity to economically challenged and politically unstable former Soviet satellites and republics of the former Yugoslavia, I think an important question to forecast is, will Hungary's membership status in the EU change by the 31st of December of 2015? I think as EU officials ponder and prioritize their focus on the role of Greece in keeping the EU together, I see a potential break between Hungary and the EU as perhaps an even more destabilizing event. I think right now this is a low probability event today, about 35%, but I can envision this probability ramping up over time. So Nick, what's your signal of the week?
Yeah, my signal of the week carries on from that discussion we had last week about ongoing tensions between Russia and NATO. Two things really. One is that France, Russia, Ukraine and Germany held talks in Paris earlier this week and agreed to commit to the ceasefire in Ukraine. It's a ceasefire which hasn't really held over the last few months, but they are reaffirming their commitment to it. But at the same time, NATO has held the first exercise of its new rapid reaction force in Poland and is deploying armoured assets to Eastern Europe. So what does this mean for prospects for peace in Ukraine? Well, that probably depends on which scenario you're looking at. Firstly, I think that the prospects for wider escalation from where the fighting is at the moment are probably lower now. We're really seeing that the stakes are getting higher for wider escalation. But at the same time, I think the prospects for lasting peace in Ukraine have probably fallen because at the moment it acts as it's one of the few fairly conveniently safe areas where both sides can apply pressure on the other without significant risk of escalation.
Thanks, Nick. That sounds great. For this episode, we're extremely pleased to welcome Gabe Zichermann. He's the author of several books on the hot subject of gamification, his most recent being The Gamification Revolution. He's a serial entrepreneur and has used his foresight in the gaming world to become one of the most sought-after speakers on how game mechanics can be leveraged in business, education, and more. He's also the founder and the chair of the G Summit, which is an annual gathering where top gamification experts get together to talk about the latest advances in the field. And here he is on the top trend he sees in the business marketing world.
So the biggest trend that I see working with startups and in the gamification space is the idea of passive big data used to figure out people's preferences. A lot of what we know about people is actually already in the social media stream on Facebook, on Instagram and Twitter, Well-constructed algorithms can piece together your Twitter stream and your Facebook stream and figure out what kind of wines you like, which type of hotel might be interesting to you, where you might want to vacation, what kinds of foods are delicious, even if you've never explicitly said those things, by compiling large amounts of big data. So I think we're entering a world in which we're going to stop asking people what they like and what they want and start inferring that based on information contained in their social media stream.
Okay, so now it's time for our segment which we call Dare to be Embarrassed. In this segment we forecast on questions that you, the viewers, send in, and we are going to be keeping score, tracking our performance, and generally trying to see which questions we do well on and which questions we do badly on. And this week we're going to be taking the Grexit. And although the Grexit sounds like a Dr. Seuss character to me, this is what the term that's being used to signify the potential Greek exit from the Eurozone. Now, this is something that's live. As we're recording this, there are talks going on between Greece and its creditors, because this is not some abstract or artificial deadline. This isn't a political crisis. Greece is about to run out of money, and if they do, they can't print more, because that's, you know, being in the Eurozone, they don't have the right to print more. So the only option is that they either don't pay their bills, they can't pay their civil servants, or they drop out of the Eurozone altogether and start printing their own currency. What are the prospects for this happening? Well, the reason that this has got to such a crisis is that they obviously desperately need more money. The creditors won't lend it to them unless they agree to some form of fiscal austerity, whether that's spending less or taxing more. And the problem is that the government, which is relatively newly elected, is there on a mandate not to do that. So it all looks like there can't be a resolution of this situation. But on the other hand, I don't think anyone really wants Greece to leave the Eurozone. The big players in the Eurozone certainly don't. Germany and France, I don't think would be willing to see that happen. And and certainly the Greek government doesn't really want this to happen. What they really want is a resolution that allows them to save face and be lent the money. So my feeling is that what the most likely outcome is some sort of agreement which is austerity, but isn't called austerity and doesn't look like austerity. But I would say that the prospects for them leaving the Eurozone over the next 6 months is still very small, something like 10%. Over to you, Regina.
Well, Nick, my biggest concern about the Grexit is actually not so much the bureaucratic impasse between Greece and its European lenders, but rather the political change and the political carnage awaiting its leader, Alexis Tsipras, back at home. The Greek voters hitched their hopes to this career academic on the basis that he was at least clean as a whistle compared to the career politicians that preceded him. And now the natives are getting pretty restless over his inability to make a deal, and they're getting ready to knock some heads. And that's something that, if we're going to talk about the base rates on this, Greece has historically done with gusto, especially during the 1950s and more recently in 2008. Either way, I would say that the probability of a status change in Greece's Euro membership before the end of the year, I actually put it a little higher. I would say that it's probably closer to about 65% for me right now. I could be very wrong. But if you, our viewers, have thoughts on this, or if you have ideas for forecast questions, send them our way through our Twitter feed, which is @super_powered. And we'd love to hear from you. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. So I think that wraps it up for us this week, Nick. Anything more from you?
No.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for watching us, and we hope to see you all again next week.